I don't need a husband." The words were firm, confident, and final. After years of betrayal, broken promises, and watching women lose themselves in unhappy marriages, she had sworn never to depend on any man again. She believed hard work could replace love and independence could silence loneliness. But then she met a quiet rancher who never tried to change her, only stood beside her when life became too heavy to carry alone. What happened between them would prove that the strongest hearts sometimes need someone to lean on. Stay until the end, because this unforgettable Wild West story from 1880 shows how one simple act of kindness changed two lonely lives forever. And if you enjoy heartwarming frontier stories filled with love, hope, and second chances, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring adventures. In the spring of 1880, the rolling plains outside Red Willow Ranch glowed beneath the golden morning sun. The peaceful frontier was filled with grazing horses, wooden fences, and the smell of fresh bread drifting from farmhouse kitchens. Yet inside one small cabin lived a woman who had closed her heart to love. Her name was Clara Bennett, and although she was still young, life had already taught her painful lessons. She had watched her mother struggle after her father's death, seen neighbors trapped in unhappy marriages, and survived a broken engagement that left her embarrassed before the entire town. From that day forward, Clara promised herself she would never depend on another man. She worked harder than anyone else, baking bread before sunrise, tending vegetables, repairing fences, and earning enough money sewing clothes for nearby ranch families. Whenever neighbors suggested she should marry, she simply smiled politely and replied, "I don't need a husband." Those words became known throughout the valley. Some admired her strength. Others whispered that pride would leave her lonely forever. Clara ignored every opinion. She believed independence was the safest life anyone could choose. Not far away lived Jacob Turner, a quiet rancher respected across the county for his honesty, patience, and gentle nature. Unlike many men, Jacob never laughed at Clara's determination. In fact, he admired it. After losing both his parents at a young age, he understood what it meant to survive through hard work alone. His ranch flourished because he treated every neighbor with kindness, never asking for praise in return. One afternoon, while delivering flour to Clara's farmhouse, Jacob noticed her struggling to knead bread dough while repairing a broken kitchen table and comforting a frightened little neighbor's child all at once. Without saying a word, he quietly fixed the loose table leg before carrying heavy sacks into the pantry. Clara frowned slightly. She wasn't used to accepting help. "You don't have to do that," she insisted. Jacob smiled calmly. "I know," he replied. "I just thought it might make your day a little easier." His answer surprised her. There were no expectations, no flirtation, and no attempt to impress her. He simply tipped his hat and left. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed more often. Sometimes Jacob repaired a broken gate while passing by. Other times Clara sent him fresh pies as thanks. Slowly, a quiet friendship began to grow. Neither of them realized that the strongest relationships are not built by grand speeches, but by small acts of kindness repeated day after day. Clara still believed she didn't need a husband. But for the first time in years, she found herself wondering why seeing Jacob ride toward her farmhouse always made her smile. The seasons continued to change, but one thing never did: the peace that had quietly settled over the ranch. The lonely house that had once echoed with silence now rang with laughter, warm conversations, and the delicious smell of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen every evening. Emily often smiled to herself when she remembered the woman who had once insisted, "I don't need a husband." Back then, those words had been her armor, protecting a heart that had been disappointed too many times. Now she understood something very different. She had never needed someone to rescue her. She had simply needed someone willing to walk beside her. Daniel had never tried to change her. He never asked her to give up her independence or her dreams. Instead, he encouraged them. When she wanted to expand the vegetable garden, he built the fences. When she suggested selling homemade pies and preserves in town, he proudly loaded the wagon every Saturday morning. When she worried she wasn't doing enough, he quietly reminded her that the ranch had become a happier place simply because she was there. The people in town noticed the difference too. The same neighbors who once whispered that Emily was too stubborn to ever marry now admired the partnership they had built. They watched the couple work together from sunrise until sunset, laughing through hard days and supporting one another through every challenge. They realized love wasn't about one person depending on another. It was about two strong people choosing each other every single day. One evening, after finishing another successful harvest, Daniel and Emily sat together on the farmhouse porch while the golden sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. Horses grazed peacefully in the fields, and the warm summer breeze carried the scent of fresh hay across the ranch. Daniel reached for her hand. "I never wanted someone to take care of," he said softly. "I wanted someone to share life with." Emily squeezed his hand and smiled. "And I spent years believing love would make me weaker." As she looked around the ranch they had built together, it didn't. It made me stronger. Daniel smiled without saying another word because he knew the truth in her eyes needed no explanation. Months later, their farmhouse became known as one of the happiest homes in the valley. Travelers were always welcomed with a warm meal. Neighbors gathered for harvest celebrations. Children from nearby ranches filled the yard with laughter while Emily taught them to bake bread and Daniel showed them how to ride horses. Their home became proof that kindness could spread far beyond one family. Looking at the joyful faces around her, Emily realized happiness had arrived quietly, not with grand promises or dramatic speeches, but through countless small acts of patience, respect, and unwavering love. The woman who once believed she needed no husband hadn't been wrong for wanting independence. She had only been waiting for the right man to show her that real love never takes away your strength. It helps you discover even more of it. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that the greatest relationships are built on trust, respect, and kindness, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt Wild West stories to life. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest blessings arrive not to change who we are, but to stand beside us as we become the very best version of ourselves. Spring arrived quietly, painting the ranch with fields of wildflowers and fresh green grass. The woman who once insisted she needed no husband now woke each morning with a peaceful smile, not because someone had rescued her, but because she had finally found someone who walked beside her instead of ahead of her. Every sunrise brought another ordinary day, filled with chores, laughter, and small moments that slowly became precious memories. She baked bread while he repaired fences. He fed the horses while she tended the vegetable garden. Neither asked the other to change. Instead, they made each other stronger simply by sharing life's burdens. The little farmhouse that had once echoed with silence was now alive with warmth, conversation, and quiet happiness. Even the neighbors noticed the difference. The woman who had once kept everyone at arm's length now greeted people with genuine kindness, while the rancher, once known as the quietest man for miles, found himself laughing more than he had in years. Their love had not arrived through dramatic promises or grand gestures. It had grown one respectful conversation, one shared meal, and one act of kindness at a time. One evening, as the golden sun disappeared behind the mountains, they sat together on the porch watching the horses graze peacefully across the valley. The rancher finally turned toward her and smiled the same gentle smile that had welcomed her on her very first day. "You once told me you didn't need a husband," he said softly. She laughed, shaking her head. "I was right," she replied. "I never needed a husband." He looked slightly confused until she reached for his hand. "What I needed was a partner. Someone who respected me, believed in me, and never tried to change who I was. I found that in you." Tears quietly filled the rancher's eyes as he squeezed her hand. There was no need for another speech. The silence between them said everything words never could. Months later, friends and neighbors gathered outside the little white church, where they exchanged simple vows beneath the warm western sky. There were no expensive decorations, no grand celebration, only smiling faces, fresh wildflowers, and hearts overflowing with gratitude. The townsfolk who had once doubted they would ever marry now watched them begin a life built not on need, but on friendship, trust, and unconditional love. Their ranch became known as a place where every traveler received a warm meal, every lonely soul found a listening ear, and every child left smiling. Together they proved that real strength is never found in refusing love. It is found in accepting it when the right person arrives. Years later, as they watched another sunset from that same wooden porch, she rested her head gently on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for never trying to prove me wrong. You simply showed me what love truly looks like." The rancher smiled toward the endless horizon, knowing the greatest blessing of his life had begun with patience instead of pressure, and that is the lesson their story leaves behind. Independence is a beautiful strength, but when two strong hearts choose to stand together with trust, kindness, and respect, they create something even greater. A home where love is freely given, burdens are shared, and every tomorrow is brighter than yesterday. If this heartwarming Wild West story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes in true love, second chances, and the quiet power of kindness. Until next time, may hope always find its way to your doorstep.